In our first video session, I gave you an overview of the purposes of Renew Soul Care Ministry training, the intended audience, and an outline of these training videos. In this session, I would like to do some motivating, some recruiting. I'd like to talk about the need and see if the Spirit of God might stir up within you a desire and passion to apply yourself to learning what you need to learn to meet the need. Let's look at Philippians 4, 2, and 3. This is in a way a shocking verse. Let's read it. I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche to agree with each other in the Lord. Yes, I ask you, loyal yokefellow, help these women who have contended at my side in the cause of the gospel, along with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers, whose names are in the book of life. What's shocking about this verse? Here we see two God-fearing Christian women, co-workers with the Apostle Paul, leaders in the early Christian movement, who couldn't get along. They were evidently disputing and arguing and not forgiving each other. And it was apparently creating quite a conflict in the church. It's likely that people were taking sides, as they often happens in such conflicts. And it had gotten so problematic and so public that Paul felt the necessity to point out the problem before the whole church in his letter. Having pastored churches for 45 years, I'm still amazed at how often such problems happen. People who have faithfully followed the Lord, who have loved Him and served Him, they stumble. Like these two, they can't seem to resolve a conflict and become hard and bitter. Or they give in to temptations that they never would have dreamed of doing. Or they return to old habits that they thought they'd conquered. Often this happens because people drift. They fudge in their disciplines or compromise in little areas, and they find themselves in a place they never wanted to be. But other times, it seems like something just rises up from within, something that they have tried to beat down their whole life, and it seemingly just overwhelms them. People can truly be Christians with their names written in the book of life. People can follow Christ faithfully for many years and still have deep, painful, seemingly irresolvable problems. Problems like what was happening with Euodia and Syntyche. Sometimes whole churches and whole associations of churches can be split by unresolved problems like these. So Paul implores a brother to help these women. Often a mediator or counselor is needed to bring perspective to help people honestly look at themselves and understand what's going on in their hearts and in their relationship with God and others. Paul calls him yokefellow. This may be a proper name, Syzygus. Help these women. Help these women. From experience, I know that such a call is often a huge challenge. But God calls people to such work. Perhaps He is calling you to such a work, to the work of helping those who are in conflict and helping those who are stuck and stranded in their life, whether by depression or anxiety or addiction or panic. I'd like to challenge you to consider that possibility. I'll have to admit that in many of my 45 years that I've been serving as a pastor, my church has not been very strong in developing Syzyguses and in helping those who were more deeply troubled. I was taught to work with people who were faithful, available, and teachable. Although I agree that we need to concentrate on such people, this doesn't seem to fit that well with working with broken, dysfunctional people. They tend not to be faithful. They tend not to be available, with loads of debt or family messes to clean up. And sometimes they can tend to not be all that teachable. Yet on the other hand, broken people may be just as spiritually interested, or more so. Often they may be more desperate to change and grow than people who seem to have it all together. But overall, it does seem that working with more dysfunctional people tends to have a greater failure rate. Producing mature disciples from such people takes more time and is more difficult. The Bible has many pictures for the church, the people of God, the family, a body. But another picture we have for the church is an army. We are soldiers of the cross, and like an army, we have a mission, the most important mission imaginable, taking the message of salvation through Jesus Christ to a lost and dying world. Yet no matter how important the mission, every army has to do something with its wounded, doesn't it? I suppose there are three choices. An army could shoot their wounded and put them out of their misery, believing that the mission is so important that we can't be bogged down with wounded people. Or they could leave their wounded behind, just ignore them, as they can't keep up and let them drop to the wayside. Or an army can help their wounded, fly them out with a helicopter to the medical tent where there are doctors trained to save their lives, maybe even to fight again another day. Which do you think would be the most Christian approach? Which do you think would generate the greater loyalty and morale amongst the troops? Now, of course, an army's ultimate goal is not just to keep the troops as healthy as possible, it's to fight the war. A church whose sole purpose is to keep everything spiritually healthy will become stagnant and ingrown, and in the end, they will have more problems and conflicts than the church that's engaged in the battle. Yet even a church on mission ought to have caregivers to help those with difficult and seemingly intractable problems. Now, to my knowledge, no churches that I have pastored have ever intentionally shot their wounded. But I do think that there have been times in the busyness and struggle and intensity of the battle that we've ignored them and left them behind. And I don't think we've done well in training doctors and nurses and setting up hospitals to care for them either. Consider what you know about the Church of God throughout the world. How many marriages have failed? How many children have gone astray? How many great leaders have fallen who might have been saved if the church had been better trained in giving care? Several years ago, I was walking through a park in our city that had huge, towering trees. And one of the trees had recently blown over in a storm. Wondering what had caused this tree to fall, I walked up to it and noticed the place where the trunk had been split was coated with a white mildew-like substance and was covered with ants. I realized that the tree had been rotten inside. Prior to falling, it looked identical to all the others. The outer bark showed no signs of decay, but inside, unbeknownst to anyone, this huge towering tree had become rotten and weak, just waiting to topple when a strong wind came along. So it can be with people. They may be towering figures in the church, gifted, renowned, hard-working, productive, yet inside, such people can be wounded, hurting, decaying, and ready to topple. Wouldn't it be a good idea if some means of detecting inner rottenness could be developed so that the tree could be healed prior to being toppled by the wind? I believe that God wants some within the church whom he will specifically gift for such a purpose, to develop tools and ways of exposing such rottenness in all the trees of the forest, not just the tall ones. Who will develop these tools? It will probably be those who are committed to working with the sickest of the trees. And as they develop tools to help the sickest, all will benefit. Jesus said that our problem is not just external. First century Israel was looking for a political, economic, and military savior. But Jesus knew that our problem was much deeper than these external things. He taught us that our problem is sin within our hearts. We must develop tools and experiences that help people go deeper into their hearts, so that they can change from the inside out. No other religion changes the inner person like Christianity does. So God calls His people to both an internal and external focus. And God calls different people to different emphases. He calls some to become experts in evangelism, in teaching, in apostleship, in church planting, and even in affecting our world socially and politically. And He calls others to become experts in pastoring, in showing mercy, in giving encouragement, and in becoming wise in how to help deep-seated problems. God has called me to such a ministry, and in this video, I'm recruiting. Yes, we want evangelists, and yes, we want church planners, and yes, we want prophets and exhorters. But we also want caregivers, people like Syzygus, called by God to wade into intractable problems, maybe between roommates, maybe between spouses, maybe between parents and children, maybe between elders and leaders. Let me warn you that this kind of ministry is tough. You will pour your life into people only to have them fall away. Sometimes they will even criticize and attack you. Sometimes it will seem like you aren't accomplishing anything at all. Your faith will be tried severely, and you'll wonder, is it worth it to continue trying to help such people? You will run up against entrenched problems that seem impossible to dislodge in people's lives. You will scratch your head and ask yourself if you ever had any gifting for this ministry. You will wonder if God ever called you to such a ministry at all. Yet you will also experience the God of the breakthrough as He brings deep and lasting change into people's lives. I think of a man I talked to who had had 10 affairs over the course of his marriage. None of them started as a purely sexual thing. He came to understand and realize that every one started with a deep-seated, desperate need for female attention. And as his marriage was about to end, this Christian man turned to his local church, which had just begun a soul care ministry similar to Renew. And through that ministry, he recalled an unspeakably painful and life-shaping moment in his life, when his mother took the seat in the courtroom and stated under oath that she no longer wanted him as her son, and she gave him up for adoption. And as he faced this horribly painful moment, he was able to release his rage toward his mom and forgive her and see that moment from the perspective of God's grace and mercy and love for him. And amazingly, since that day, his incessant need for female attention has simply vanished. His marriage has been restored, and he has grown to become a faithful husband and father. Let me ask you, was it worth it? Was it worth it for someone in that local church to learn the skills that they used in their care ministry? I think it was. As I said, I'm recruiting. I urge you to consider the potential of soul care ministry for the advancement of God's kingdom and for the good of God's people. I urge you to pay attention during these videos. Take notes. Become familiar with the concepts. Watch the crucial videos several times. Here you'll find some powerful tools to look below the surface of the heart, and with the help of the Spirit of God, reclaim ground that the enemy has taken in our lives. It can set people free. It can set you free.